my sense is that it means that people identify with sport on their phones. They're no longer physically active. They're no longer involved with other people.
Back on Closer Look on this Tuesday, March 24th with Michael Friscolanti. I'm Scott Sexsmith. For the record, I am sick and tired of winter.
Yeah, it just won't end.
You know what? We woke up here. We're in the north. People know that. HQ here in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. 5 centimeters again today. I'm just done. I'm dare I say, pissed off. And I will say that because I know everyone is thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't want to say it. There you go. I said it for you. Even people who love snow are tired of it.
It is a lot of snow. And I think we broke a record, right, for most snow ever in Sault Ste. Marie.
What did I hear today?
It's more than
530 centimeters?
centimeters.
Yeah.
It's a lot of snow plowing, Scott. That's okay. Baseball's in the air, opening days in a couple days. March is a great time to be a sports fan.
My goodness.
You watching the madness? You have a bracket filled out?
I do not. Was never much of a basketball guy, but you're right. You've got March Madness. You've got the baseball season starting up later this week.
Mm-hmm.
OHL playoffs starting. Mm-hmm. The NHL's, 6 weeks away?
Yep.
The Masters is coming. I mean, this is just...
It's
I could have time to work.
It's a great time. And I actually filled out a bracket for the first time in a long time, for the March Madness. I think, and so they're all online now. Right? In the old days when we used to hang out with our buddies in university, we'd write it on paper, hang it on the residence wall, and there'd be a great. But now it's all online. And I think the other day there were 26 million brackets filled out online, and there were only 2 perfect ones left, which was pretty crazy.
Wow!
But it did get me thinking about the gambling culture and the online gambling, sports gambling. It's an issue we've talked about on the show in the past.
Yes, we have.
But it's one that you see in the headlines every week because there's new research coming out saying that there's the damage this is doing to people, that's so easy to place bets. I think the latest research showed that calls to the Ontario helpline, I think, for gambling are up 300% or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And I think I read a LinkedIn post from a well-known trustee, like insolvency trustee in Canada, saying that he's never seen so many bankruptcies that are driven by gambling.
Wow.
Because it's like you're literally on your phone and you see the ads. So this is an issue we've talked about in the past. And we're going to talk about it again today with a great guest, Bruce Kidd. For those of us who maybe
I feel like we should be waving a Canadian flag.
That's right. Just to bring everyone to speed, Bruce Kidd was a great athlete in his prime.
Yes.
In the 60s, he was the athlete. He was a track and field star, twice Canadian Press Athlete of the Year in the early 1960s, won the Lou Marsh Trophy for Canada's top athlete.
Yeah.
He's in the Canadian Olympic Hall of Fame. He's in Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. He's an officer of the Order of Canada. For a long time, he was a professor at University of Toronto as well. He's a lawyer as well. And he's now kind of leading the charge, one of the people leading the charge to ban gambling ads. What's the right title? He's the chair of ban ads for gambling, which makes sense. Yeah. And he's very passionate about this. And you can imagine he's lived on both ends, right? Being the elite athlete he was.
Great perspective.
Great perspective on not just what this is doing to people who are gambling, but what it's doing to the athletes who are in this different kind of pressure now that everyone's gambling on and betting on what they're doing. So we reached out to him, asked him to come on, and he said, of course, and we're really looking forward to this conversation.
For years, gambling in Ontario was something you had to go looking for, a casino, a ticket. It was a conscious choice. Now it's everywhere, on your phone, during the game that you're watching on TV, even in the ads between plays. And as access has exploded, so have the warning signs. A new study shows calls to Ontario's gambling helpline have nearly tripled, with young men driving much of the increase. Bruce Kidd is a former track and field Olympian and the chair of Ban Ads for Gambling. He's been pushing for stricter limits on how and where these ads show up. Bruce joins us tonight from Toronto. Bruce, appreciate your time. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much.
Bruce, I think this is one of those topics that should begin with maybe a bit of a history lesson. There was a time, and not long ago, when gambling was not legal in this country. When did that change specifically here in Ontario?
Well, that's hard to account for. It changed in part in the late teens, 2017, 2018, when the U.S. Supreme Court legalized sports betting across the border. And some Canadians felt that we would have to do the same, or we would lose tourists and others to the U.S. In the House of Commons, where bills to legalize sports betting had been presented again and again for many years, there was a similar change of heart, change of direction. And in 2021, a majority of parliamentarians voted to legalize sports betting here, to amend the criminal code to no longer prohibit sports betting.
Can you take us back? What was your reaction to that when that happened, Bruce?
You know, I didn't think very much about it at the time. I noted it. I wondered about it, but it really wasn't on my radar. It was only when, as a sports fan who watches a lot of sports on television, I was bombarded by the ads. I was grossed out by the way that it changed the viewing experience, the way broadcasters became shills. Broadcasters that I'd respected all my life became shills for the betting companies, promoting the bets and the odds. And then in the sports milieu that I inhabit, primarily at the University of Toronto and around Toronto, saw the extent to which athletes are betting, coaches are worrying about betting, young persons, particularly men, are preoccupied with their bets. And you could see that it was a crisis. It wasn't only offensive in the games that I saw on television, but I heard from athletic directors that athletes were losing their tuition money because they'd overextended themselves on bets and so on and so forth. And that's how I became involved. I was mostly concerned about the effect on sports and the way that it was changing the culture of sports. But as I became involved in it further and began to read the reports from the Canadian Medical Association and CAMH and other bodies, I began to see that it's primarily a health problem, really a public health crisis.
So it is a public health crisis. We've touched on this in the show. We do want to talk about some of those issues about how it impacts the sport and the athletes. But let's talk about some of those health effects first, Bruce. What strikes you? I mean, we've seen so many problems with mental health issues, with major debt that people are racking up. What are some of the things that have happened because of this legalization that concern you the most?
Well, the number of people who gamble and who gamble extensively has grown significantly. In the years before legalization, Statistics Canada estimated that 1.3% of Canadians were involved in sports betting and were considered problem gamblers. The last Canadian survey by the Canadian Centre for Substance Use and Addiction, November of last year, reported that number is now 9.9%.
Wow.
The number of Canadians experiencing problem gambling, that's about 4 million people.
That's insane.
Frightening.
Yeah, that's beyond frightening. That's 1 in 10, basically.
Yeah, yes, 1 in 10.
That's
1 in 10.
That's crazy.
And among the age group 18 to 29, it's also very high, like 25%.
Wow. Bruce, do we know how much the province of Ontario is pocketing from legal gambling?
I don't know that number. They tax the gross revenue of gambling companies now at the rate of 22.5%. That's relatively low in North American terms. Across the lake, New York State taxes at 51%. But I can't tell you, although I could look it up, what that grosses for the Consolidated Revenue Fund. I don't remember everything these days.
But it's in the billions, we assume, right, Bruce? They're making billions a year on this?
I think so.
In any event, it's a big
But
number.
is that money going into the treatment of
Yeah.
those addicted? Is it going into public education programs? That's the concern.
So, Bruce, we know sports betting is now deeply embedded in broadcast odds, live bets, celebrity endorsements. What does that do to the way young viewers experience sports? What's the impact there?
We need to research this in detail, but my sense is that it means that people identify with sport on their phones.
Yeah.
They're no longer physically active. They're no longer involved with other people. They're no longer outside training and visualizing themselves scoring a goal or throwing a pass or winning a race and so on. And they're not interacting with other people in the cultural sense and the way that you learn about other people in communities. It's all on your phone. Some of the apologists for sports betting in the Olympic community argue that it increases the interest in sports. And that is certainly true. And as the backers will tell you, given all the prop bets, it encourages many people to watch to the end of the game, not turn off when it's a blowout or the outcome is certain. But I see no evidence that increased interest actually leads to physical participation, which is where you develop the health benefits, the resilience, the social skills, the interaction with other people.
Yeah, it's certainly a changed world for sure. The other big concern, we've seen it firsthand really, Bruce, is that even though there's an age limit to this, we know younger kids who are not of that age, they're still they're still finding a way to bet with it, use their phones. They'll be in the middle of a school day racking up losses, racking up debt. That's a major concern just from a financial perspective too, right? These kids, the amount of money they're losing.
That is correct, but I worry about the grooming of kids into a lifetime of betting. I heard in a podcast recently organized by Canadian Mental Health Canada that some of their branches had moved their education about gambling from grade 9 to grade 1 because of the prevalence of children 5 and 6 who are engaging in sports betting or asking their parents and grandparents to help them bet on sports. That's frightening.
That is crazy.
Certainly is. Bruce, many will draw parallels here with tobacco and alcohol advertising and, of course, the associated harms. Are we repeating the same mistakes that we've already learned from?
I would say so, and my colleagues and I in the campaign to ban ads for gambling model our advocacy on what an earlier generation did with tobacco. I mean, as a way of reducing the harms, governments eventually reduced the ads, and they put warnings on packages, and they conducted health programs in schools. I think that's what we have to do with respect to sports betting. We're not calling for it to be prohibited again, but people should know what the risks are. At the moment, it's celebrated. At the moment, it's normalized. At the moment, people think there's nothing wrong with it, and we've got to change those perceptions.
I hate to point out one person in particular, but the ad I keep seeing features Connor McDavid for when he's advertising for. How much does that concern you that such an elite athlete like Connor McDavid is pushing this product? And have you ever had a chance to speak to any of these athletes? You're an athlete yourself, to speak to these athletes about the harm that this does?
Not to Connor McDavid and not to any current athlete. And I'm sorry about that. There are athletes, former Olympic athletes, former professional athletes who certainly agree with us. But the current generation, and part of this is their collective agreements with the leagues that are part of the industry, that they won't say anything negative about betting.
Bruce, what impacts does legalized gambling have on these athletes? There must be all kinds of different pressures now.
Well, yes, there are. Number one, there's enormous pressures to manipulate the results. Not so much, I can't imagine, I mean, a guy like Connor McDavid making what he's making has no financial incentive to manipulate the outcome or throw a game. But you talk to people from the RCMP and other investigators of crime, what they point to are players who are not paid very well, who are induced to make some extra money by manipulating a game so that someone can win a prop bet. And to the international conferences that I go to, the sport that's most frequently affected is tennis, where below the top 100, players don't make very much. They have to pay their travel and other expenses out of pockets, and it's easy to fix a game. Lower tiers of soccer is another one that's targeted for that. So the corruption in the form of cheating, in the form of game manipulation, is now a huge risk. I would say the other factor is the abuse of athletes who disappoint bettors, and bettors scream at them or threaten them, often when they're athletes of color in racist terms. And there are a number of well-documented cases in Canada with professional teams. It's now a big concern in the U.S. talking about March Madness. It's a big concern in the NC2A. In a sport like basketball. And the NC2A is now campaigning to ban prop bets on college athletes because of the abuse that athletes have received from disappointed bettors. It's a safe sport issue.
It's a great point, right? Because we see it goes to the heart of the sport, the spirit of sport, right?
Yeah.
Now people look at these athletes as if someone that just represents their financial fortunes. That's it. If I bet that they do what they need to do, I'm going to win this bet, as opposed to looking at them as we have for so long as just people we idolize for their ability to play that particular sport.
And I would, if an athlete who's over 18 decides as part of a collective agreement to allow themselves to be objects of betting, I guess that's okay. What I find really upsetting and offensive is that some of these betting companies accept bets on levels of sport where the athletes don't even know that they're the subject of bets until someone abuses them for not realizing a prop bet. I think that there should be a regulation that says unless the athletes involved agree to being subjects of bets through a collective agreement, that betting not be allowed upon them. That would be an important safeguard.
You're a former elite athlete yourself, Bruce. Maybe you still are. I shouldn't assume that you're not still an elite athlete. But you were a track star in the 60s, well-known Olympian. Do you have ever thought to put yourself in the shoes what it must be like if someone had approached you when you were racing or you were running and say, "Hey, Bruce, this is what I'm thinking of doing"? Could you imagine the pressure that would have been? And do you sympathize with the athletes of today who deal with that?
Well, I would just, I can't think of anything more offensive. Now, I was an amateur athlete, and I was lucky enough to grow up in a middle-class family and at a good university, so I was able to look after myself. But I cannot think of anything more offensive to the spirit of sport than someone's asking you not to do your best to give somebody else a chance to win some money. I cannot tell you what I just, it's incomprehensible to me that someone would have the effrontery to do that.
Yes, and it's happening, right? We know it's happening. We once in a while we see the headlines about someone who's been arrested or charges laid or allegations made. Yeah. It's definitely happening. It's a legitimate concern, Bruce.
Bruce, so what now? What do we do?
Well, we're campaigning for Bill S-211 to regulate advertising for sports betting in Canada. We're also campaigning that Canada sign the Macklin Convention against the manipulation of sports competition, so that in the criminal code there would be prohibitions against the fixing that we're talking about right now, and would give the federal government more powers of public education so that it would have a better legal framework in this complicated federal country to do what the tobacco regulations now do, allow messages, truthful messages about the risks to be inserted in messages about sports gambling. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're working with community agencies to try to develop effective education about the harms of sports betting, to denormalize this mystique that currently exists, that it's a harmless form of entertainment. I mean, if 4 million people are addicted, we've got to address that.
It's a major issue. So just to be clear, in a perfect world, there would be no gambling ads from as far as your organization is concerned. There'd be none allowed?
That is correct.
That makes sense. And who in the highest level of power have you been able to sit down and speak to about this, Bruce? Have you been able to get a cabinet minister's ear in Ontario or in Canada?
We've talked to, we're lobbying the federal government. It's an interesting, the bill was initiated by Senator Marty Deacon, a former Olympic leader, and unanimously approved by the Senate, and it's now in the House of Commons. We would like to see it a government bill, but we are told that given the polarization of the House of Commons right now, it's probably better if it's a private member's bill so that members from all sides can vote on their conscience, and it's going ahead on that basis. We've talked to people at the senior political and civil service level about implementation when passed, so we're encouraged.
Well, you are a marathon runner, so you understand how things can take some time. So that's a good background to have. Can I ask you, Bruce, what about the argument that we just ban this gambling? Say it was a terrible mistake. We shouldn't have done this. We're going to do it. Stop doing it. Do we not do that because people will just find other ways to gamble online and use other platforms and not ones regulated by Ontario, for example?
I wish we had a serious public debate about that. I think the consensus is that the horse is out of the barn and we'll never be able to put it back. So let's talk about minimizing the harms rather than reversing that. So that's the position we're taking. I wish somebody would raise the question you're raising in Parliament. That would be a good discussion.
Well, sometimes we go all the way to Parliament, Bruce. We have that kind of sway, and I'm just kidding. We don't at all. But actually having you on the show is good. It's a great educational opportunity. A lot of people listen to the show, watch the show, will listen, and maybe think about things that they didn't beforehand. Anything else to add, Bruce, before we let you go tonight?
No, thank you very much. If your listeners agree with the idea of limiting the harm by reducing advertising, they should get in touch with their MP and make their views known.
There's Bruce Kidd, the chair of Ban Ads for Gambling, joining us from Toronto tonight. Bruce, appreciate your time. Good to see you.
Thank you very, very much, and thanks for having me on.
Here's what I don't understand about the buying of players, right, to change the outcome of games. And Bruce is right. A guy like Connor McDavid, who makes what, 12, 14 million bucks a year,
plus.
Yeah. He has the ability and the skill to change the outcome of any game that he plays in. But does a fourth line winger who's making $750,000, $850,000 who gets limited ice time, who you would think would be the one that you would go to and dangle that carrot, but they can't really make the same kind of influences that a guy like.
But I think it's the prop bets you can bet on any of the. You can bet that this person's going to lose this game in tennis, for example, like a single game or a single point, right?
Okay.
That they're going to double fault here. I don't know. Can you bet on that? I assume you can.
I'm sure you can.
I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
So it's those little things, and we have seen there's been some criminal charges in the U.S. against kind of bit players, the guys who aren't big names. I think there was a guy suspended in the NBA recently. So it's always out there. And I'm sure he mentioned the RCMP. I'm sure investigators have told him on the side, hey, we've seen this, we've seen that.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff has happened. For me, it goes back to what he said at the beginning of the interview is just how much has changed the enjoyment of watching sports.
Yeah.
And he's right about the broadcasters. Like the teams that I enjoy watching, I enjoy their broadcasters. And then it drives me bonkers when in the fourth inning they start telling me what the odds are. And it's like you've kind of ruined all it's credibility in a lot of ways. It's like
I think I read a stat, and I want to make sure that I get this right, that 20% of CBC's ad revenues are directly related to gambling ads.
I think that was in Bruce's. He sent us some material before
Maybe
the
that's
interview.
what it
Yeah,
was.
he has a slideshow that he uses, a slide deck when he's
20%.
20%. It's crazy, but it's huge money, right? It's massive revenue, and I think there's almost 100 regulated. What are they called? Platforms you can bet on in Ontario alone, right? Yeah. And to me, it's the kids, and I hate to be like, because I'm an old man now, right? Wow, the kids are going to be in big trouble, but it's true, right? Like you're 16 years old, and you're on school, and you're betting with your dad's credit card or whatever you're using to lose money.
Yeah.
It's crazy, and the grooming is the right word. Bruce said it. You're grooming these young kids for a lifetime of this behavior and this belief that you can actually make a living doing this. Like you're going to be a gambler and you'll make money. You're not. You're going to lose.
No. House always wins, man.
If you've won big money and you've won, send us an email. Nobody wins. There's no way that someone's bought a nice house.
You win a little just to keep you.
But
right?
no one's bought a nice house and a nice car playing. What are they? I don't even bet 365. How many people on bet 365 have won more than 50 grand? Nobody.
Don't know.
There you go. There's my bold prediction.
All right.
Bet on it.
Bet on it. And I bet we'll be back tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Here on Closer Look. Closer Look at villagemedia.ca. Your thoughts on gambling ads. We would love to hear from them. For Derek Turner, executive producer of this evening's program, and Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for your time. See you tomorrow night at 7 here on Closer Look.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.